From Western New York, this is Self-Advocacy in Action. Today's special guest is the very extraordinary Mike Rogers. Now, here's your host, a lady who will soon be coming to a game show near you, Gwen Squire.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. Today, our special guest star is Mike Rogers. Mike, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you, Gwen?
I'm doing good. So, Mike, tell us about yourself and how, what life was like before you became an advocate for yourself.
Oh, well, before I became an advocate, Gwen, I was really kind of angry because I didn't know my place in the world. I didn't know why people didn't understand about disability-related issues and why people weren't doing anything about it. Because from my perspective, I was involved with my family a lot. I didn't see a lot of change. And I got mad because I was like, why isn't anybody working on this? Why don't you see more action? So I was like, well, then this isn't really worth it. I'm not going to get involved in anything because nothing's ever going to change. Life for a person with a disability is going to be the same. You have struggles. Nobody cares about it.
Right.
And that's the way it's going to be.
Right.
People would say I was like very bitter about stuff.
Okay, so what was the moment you had that said, I should become an advocate for myself?
Well, the moment for me was really when I wanted to go on a field trip at my school, and I needed transportation. And at that time, my grandfather worked for a bus company. He said, "Oh, we'll just bring a bus over for him, and I'll drive it, and it can be a big bus. And we'll just get him on the bus." And they go, "Well, no, it's got to have tie downs." And there was this big to-do about it.
Wow.
And I said that I was going to do legal action and things of that nature. Because I was mad because I wasn't going to be included along with the other students.
Yeah. I've been through similar situations.
And so that's when, the fire in me started to say, hey, we have to change some of these things because it's not right.
Yeah, exactly. Tell me how you learned about the self-advocacy process.
How I learned about the self-advocacy process? Well, it was interesting because, I didn't know anything.
Okay.
A friend of mine told me about the fact that there was an organization that had an AmeriCorps project that did public speaking.
Okay.
And he said, why don't you get involved in it? And at that time I was out of a job and I wanted money, and he said there was a stipend. So I said, well, let me give it a shot. I don't know anything about public speaking. I kind of stink as a public speaker. I get all nervous. But then I got involved in that. And then I met people who said, well, Mike, what about doing this? What about doing that in your personal life? I never thought about anything like that because I never met anybody that got into groups or anything like that.
Okay.
I just thought it was going to always be this individual struggle.
Okay. So when you got involved finally, did you come to the realization or to your own conclusion rather, that it's better to work as a group, or do you think it's still better to work as an individual?
Well, I think you can work as an individual, but I think if you work as a group, first of all, it shows a sense of unity, and it also shows people that you're social, that you can work together, that you come up with different ideas, and it gives you a sense of empowerment.
Yeah, it does.
It gives you a sense of strength. Like, I'm not in this alone, because I think a lot of people with disabilities feel isolated and alone, and when you do, you get depressed, you sometimes don't want to do anything. Woe is me, is anything ever going to change? And I'm not saying that those feelings can't creep back in,
right?
But you're often more likely to feel better about yourself when you have people supporting you.
This is true. Yeah, that's true. What issues do you consider are like really important for today?
Well, I think personally, I think one of the most important issues, because I hear it all the time, is for people with disabilities is transportation and inclusion. Being thought of as being part of the community. Because I get all the time, I can't get where I need to go because I live in the suburbs and there's only transportation in the city, and people are almost like crying about it because they're like, I want to be in these events. I want to be a part of. I want to be able to go to this particular thing, but the bus only comes at 5 in the morning and 7 at night.
Right.
Those type of things.
Okay.
And that's why working on that as a group is very important, because as the system changes and people move out into the community more, that'll become increasingly an issue.
So you have a job yourself, don't you?
Yes. I actually work for the Self-Advocacy Association of New York State, but today I'm not representing them.
Right.
I am a community member.
Right. Okay. What does it mean to act on an issue?
Well, I think this is a very important topic because I know that I am the king of procrastination, which means coming up with all these ideas or coming up with things I want to do and not doing anything about it. So I think action means coming up with an idea, coming up with a plan to act on it and actually do something. Like, for instance, with transportation. We recently thought about the idea of doing a writing campaign. Actually, not just saying transportation is not good in these particular areas, but working together as groups and doing a writing campaign, using the skills that we have as individuals and groups together to do something about it. Meet with public officials and say, this isn't right. How can we work together to change things? That's good action.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you my own personal question. Do you think that people are a lot more open nowadays, like in the community, to people with disabilities?
I think in some ways they are, but there's a lot of work to do. So the more they see us out there doing something, even if you go to a restaurant and you say that you can't get in because of this step,
right,
or because the bathroom's not accessible, those little actions, even by an individual, can make maybe the restaurant owner say, hey, this guy wants to get in here and he can't.
Right.
Even if change might take a while, that's a seed.
I agree with that. Do you feel that only self-advocates should push for change, or do you think that people in the community should be involved with that as well?
Oh, no. People in the community need to get involved in that. But in order to do that, people with disabilities have to be out in the community to get them involved. Right. Like the other day, I was in a restaurant and I had dress clothes on, and I know if I do some things with food, it'll get all over and it'll mess up my dress clothes.
Me too.
So I asked the waitress if she could help me put butter on my pancakes, because I know for a fact that it'll flip all over and it'll get on me, and I didn't need that to happen. So she said, sure, I'll do that for you. And that's getting people involved. It's teaching people in small ways that people with disabilities are going to come in your restaurant and ask you maybe to do some certain things and not be afraid or worried about that. And it's not that I couldn't do it, but I didn't want to have messy clothes.
I hear you.
And so you find a way to not have messy clothes.
How does someone get involved in the community, get involved with advocating?
Well, what's interesting, when I didn't think of anything about volunteering. When I was young, I couldn't stand the idea of doing something for free, that they were just going to pity me because I couldn't get a job. And I couldn't stand the idea of volunteering. I wanted to throw things at people because they said volunteer. But when I got involved with self-advocacy, volunteering became important. Getting out in the community and helping organizations do things, or helping your neighbor. It could be small things.
Right.
Helping your neighbor do things if they need help getting their groceries in from the car. Because then you meet people. You network in any way that you can. You network like I have recently become involved in Voice Buffalo, which is a community group that I'll mention at the end there. You know, you get to meet so many different people you wouldn't meet before. You get to be involved in important things,
right,
like transportation issues. And you push for change in a peaceful way. It doesn't have to be, do what I want you to do. I mean, sometimes you have to get a little bit forceful, but
right,
working together to promote change and helping other people at the same time.
yeah. I think that kind of works a little bit better than being demanding and being.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes there's a need for that if something gets serious enough. But working together to promote change, and you get to know people. It's so important, especially when you have challenges.
What do you think is the biggest barrier for an advocate?
The biggest barrier for an advocate is the idea of I can't do this, I can't do that. Somebody told me I can't.
So they're
I can't.
personal.
Yes, it's an idea of conditioning. I used to think to myself, oh, that'll never happen.
Right.
Never is the same thing as can't. Because, but now I'm like, well, maybe, you know, do I get frustrated? Yes. Push through these situations. I think this will happen for people with disabilities, or I think this will happen for me. I'm going to push for that change.
Right. Now, you don't just advocate for yourself, though, do you?
Oh, no. People come up to me all the time and say, well, you know, the house says I can't do this or can't do that. And I say, well, how can we work? We work with that. I can use a perfect example of our announcer over here who needs help in some areas of getting around. And, you know, one of his staff people asked if I could help with that. And I said, sure. And it lets Eric be involved in the self-advocacy group that I'm a president of.
Right.
You know, you work with people. You don't look at their barriers. You become a way around that barrier for them.
Yeah, exactly. How has your life experience made you a better person?
Oh, I can say, well, I couldn't stand people. I couldn't stand people. I didn't let them know that because that's like mean.
Right.
But in some ways, sometimes I did.
Yeah.
But I didn't like people that could walk because they didn't understand us. They didn't care.
Okay.
I didn't like people with disabilities because I thought they were lazy. Why aren't you getting out there and doing that? So I was like stuck in the middle. I felt kind of trapped. I wasn't on one side. I wasn't on the other. So where was I? But when I got involved in the community, when people say you can actually do something to affect change, that changed who I was.
Yes.
Does it make me a totally different person? No, I get frustrated, but instead of looking at that frustration as a barrier, I say, well, how can I get around it? How can I work with you? And I've started trying to work with people without
Disabilities.
visual disability to say, hey, work with each other, become involved. Like I love video games. I'm a video game guy.
Yes, I know.
But it really bothers me how in the digital age we've become so isolated from personal contact with each other. You know, I want to say to my younger cousins, put down the headset and come out and talk to people.
Right.
Interact without all that technology. I recently lost my cell phone, and it feels like I lost my best friend.
Oh, I know.
Because we're so connected in that way. We don't remember phone numbers because we just press the button.
Right.
You know, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, but it seems to me like a lot of people that you're talking about, like right now, of advocates they don't want to get out there because they're afraid of what's out there.
Yes.
That's a barrier.
It can be a very big barrier. But when you work in groups, and you have support. Like a lot of times I'll get frustrated about things and yell and all this kind of stuff and be frustrated. But then somebody will say, Mike, let's calm down about that. Because they know me. I'm very passionate. I get frustrated. And then I'm like, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I'll back away from that a little bit. I mean, you know, that perspective kind of helps.
Yeah. How have you grown as a person? I think I asked you that in a different way, but
and I have become, you know, more introspective. I look at things differently. I don't look at the end result. I look at the steps in between.
Okay.
And that helps, because the goal isn't so insurmountable if you take it step by step.
Now, when you're becoming, you know, aware of yourself and becoming the person you are now, which is a great person, by the way.
Well, thank you.
Did your family help you out with that, or?
Well, you know, that's interesting that you say that, because my mother, when I was growing up, didn't have a lot of answers to most of my questions, and she knew I was getting mad about it. But what she would say is, don't stop trying. I don't have answers. She was honest with me. She was like, I don't have the answers to these things. And you know I don't. But don't stop trying. You know, don't stop going out there and doing things, even if people tell you not to, because that's what it's all about.
Do you think it also started like when you were mainstreamed into a regular classes and stuff?
Oh yeah, because you're faced with a lot of the challenges. You're faced with having to talk to people. I talk well now.
Yes, you do.
You know, I mean, I can talk to anybody about anything, and
you can't always shut you up.
And almost never shut me up
Yep.
if it's something that I'm passionate about.
Yep.
But I would need to go, and I would need to pep talk myself every morning and say, today you have to talk, because if you don't, you'll be in the same position, and they'll be in the same position they are. It was like looking at the mirror, and you know, in the bathroom, and practicing, and it's something that didn't come to me easy, because I didn't like the feeling of being isolated and feeling weird, and
it's kind of scary to speak up.
It
really
certainly is, because someone might not like what you say.
Exactly. They don't want to listen to you. They'll cut you off. You know.
Yeah.
And I think
it's not easy.
No, it isn't. And I think too, people have a problem with relating to us sometimes with people with disabilities because of that.
Yeah.
You know, they're afraid of what they might say that's wrong.
Yeah.
And, you know,
I tell them, just say it. You know, just people are always so worried about how people are going to react, but the reaction is the idea. If it's a negative reaction, turn it into something positive. Say, okay, you think like that, but let's see why you think like that. Or this is my perspective. And they go, oh, I never thought of it like that. And they're not as bad as you may have thought they were.
Exactly. How can people get involved, like we were talking about before with Voice Buffalo, the things in their community? How would they go about doing something like that?
Well, you know, what I would do is, first of all, I would like a good one is like coffee shops, community places will have like flyers and stuff up, and if you hear it through like community publications, hear it through word of mouth, even if it doesn't sound interesting, you know, just go to see about these things, you know, because I've had friends in the past who say, oh, nothing's ever going to change, so why do it? No, well, get involved, see about these things. Go to community events in the summertime, carnivals and stuff. Anything to get yourself involved. Don't stay in the house. Those four walls can crush you if you let them.
Exactly. I know in the wintertime for me, I get like kind of depressed because I'm stuck in the house.
Yeah, it can be.
Yeah.
So try to get involved.
Exactly. So
and then make that involvement an action to change something.
do you have any advice for people out there that want to like start their own group?
I really do. I say get people that are interested in a lot of the things that you are, and try to get them together. because I've noticed that being involved in starting groups and being in a group, if you have a common goal, it helps a lot.
Like you said, like for transportation.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, maybe write a letter or go see a politician and let them know that this is a problem, because people aren't going to know
Unless you speak up.
unless you speak up.
So, is there anything that you would like to bring up that I have not brought up?
Yes, there are a couple of things. The Voice Buffalo is helping promote an event. It is at 2421 Main Street in Buffalo. It's a forum on transportation. We're going to have a panel of speakers, and people from the community can get involved. It's on June 24th at 6:30 p.m.
Okay.
And the Center for Self-Advocacy, that is a non-for-profit that wants to help people get involved in their community, is having a fundraiser. Tickets are $25 a piece.
Okay.
You get 2 drinks. It's at Rob's Comedy Playhouse.
Okay.
And that's at 1340 North Forest, Williamsville, New York, from 6 to 9:30 p.m. on July 28th. There's baskets and 50-50 raffles.
Okay. Now, can anybody come to those events?
Yes.
They don't have to have a disability, right?
No, you don't have to have a disability. We encourage people without disabilities to be involved. But especially in the forum.
Right.
Get involved in that, as well as supporting a new non-for-profit that wants to support people with disabilities. We have to, support our community groups.
Right. For the self-advocacy groups, does it have to just be filled with just people with disabilities, or can it be blended?
Well, that's interesting, because for a long time we have thought about people with disabilities being the main people in a group, and they should, because that instills a sense of empowerment.
Right.
But there are now people that are thinking, get people without visible disabilities involved, to get that perspective. Whether it be direct support professionals or just people from the community.
Right.
So that idea is kind of changing there.
Yeah.
So it's a good idea, because there could be a perspective you haven't thought about.
Right. And there are people out there without disabilities who see things from our point of view, see things that should be changed. Like, for instance, going to a restaurant and you see somebody being carried up the stairs, they might be like, why is that person, being taken up the stairs? And they actually will speak up sometimes themselves.
Yeah. I mean, I've been to places that weren't accessible, because myself being absent-minded sometimes doesn't call and ask, and they see you waiting outside, and this isn't right. There's steps, and people need to do something about that. Now, does that person go home and do something about it? Maybe not, maybe so, but at least you put that in their mind.
Right.
They say, I never thought about that before. Or if you can't get in the bathroom, they say, that's not fair.
Right.
And those little things can promote a lot of change.
Yep.
So that's what I think is very important. Just be involved. Movement. I mean.
How many groups would you say that you belong to?
A lot of things that I've become involved with. I am vice president of the board of visitors of the DDSO. I would have never gotten involved in anything like that, and that is a board that oversees services and things like. I am the vice president of the board of Center for Self-Advocacy.
Okay.
I am the president of the Freedom Self-Advocacy Group. I would have never done any of that stuff if I hadn't gotten involved in the community.
Right.
And it took other people to do that.
Yeah.
And if you're afraid, it's okay to be afraid,
It
guys.
is.
It's okay to be shaking and
Yep.
saying, I don't know if these people are going to accept me.
Right.
Just understand that they're just like you. Well, if they wear a suit, You know, you need to respect people in every situation. But, you know, they put that suit on just like you did this morning, your shirt.
Okay. We have about 2 minutes left for the show. Is there
Sure.
anything you want to bring up that hasn't been brought up?
Well, I just think that one thing, and I think you can relate to this, is parents. I think parents are very important in the advocacy world.
Yes.
And I love to see the fact that parents have started to work with self-advocates, although sometimes they may see things differently.
Right.
They're starting to see that we all have to work together for each other's goals.
Right.
And I feel that, you know, because a person, who do they go to? They go to their family and say, hey, what do I do about this stuff that isn't working out?
Right.
What do I do about that I'm not able to get a job easy in the community? You know, parents can be a part of that. And I think jobs are very important. We have to start going out and advocating for people with disabilities to get jobs and equal pay and things of that nature. I know that I've had difficulty in the past being included and part of that, because it's hard to know where you're going to fit at that job. But the more and more we do it, the more and more people in the community will see.
I agree. I'd like to thank you for joining us today. It's been great.
Well, you're welcome. It's
Yeah.
always great to work with you, Gwen.
You too.
And you know I want to thank you guys for listening to me babble on for the last half hour or so.
That's
All right.
okay.
Well, thank you.
I'd like to thank the viewers for joining us today. We will see you all next time, and have a great self-advocacy day. And remember to speak up.
This is Eric Bazant speaking for Self-Advocacy in Action, a Sandus Western production. To see more Self-Advocacy in Action, you can follow us on Twitter or like us on Facebook and YouTube, or go to www.saneaction.com. That's www.sainaction.com.